The text went out at 11:47 p.m. On a Thursday, 2 glasses of wine passed good judgment, and 1 suppressor dose short of safety. I had meant to send it to Petra. Petra, who lived 6 blocks away and kept emergency heat blockers in her medicine cabinet like most people kept aspirin. Petra, my best friend since we were both 19 and broke and newly designated in a city that did not care. Petra, whose number was the one directly above the contact I actually texted. I did not notice the mistake. My hands were shaking too badly by then. The reply came in 4 minutes and 31 seconds. I counted all of them while sitting on my bathroom tile, back against the tub, forehead against my knees. Address, now. That was the whole message. No punctuation at the end. No name. I assumed Petra was being efficient. I sent the address and dropped the phone and stopped thinking about much of anything coherent after that because my body had been pulling toward this for 3 days and the last suppressor had worn through an hour ago and the logic center of my brain had essentially filed for early retirement. The knock came at 11:52. 5 minutes. Petra lived 6 blocks away. That was either a personal land speed record or something was wrong. I got to the door in stages. Knees, feet, hall wall used as infrastructure. The peephole was too high for the angle my body had decided was comfortable, so I just opened the door. The woman standing in my doorway was not Petra. She was not even close to Petra. She stood several inches taller than me, in a charcoal overcoat that looked like it had been cut by someone who considered geometry a personal insult to be corrected. Her hair was dark and pulled back in a way that suggested it was usually not pulled back. Her eyes were the specific gray of deep water right before it gets very cold. I had seen those eyes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 11 months across a conference table on the 14th floor. Reverie Kang, CEO of Kang Meridian Capital. My employer. My employer's employer. The woman whose name appeared on my direct deposit and also on the masthead of 3 international financial publications, and also I now registered with the remaining operational section of my brain in my recent texts because her contact name in my phone was RE, work, urgent, and Petra's was Petra, and they were in fact adjacent in my contact list, and I had made a catastrophic and irrevocable error. The scent hit me before the horror finished forming. Black spruce and cold iron, precise and enormous, the way a thunderstorm is enormous before it arrives, when you can smell the pressure changing in the air. It rolled into the hallway, and my body did something it should not have done at all, which was orient toward it like a compass finding north. Her nostrils moved, almost imperceptibly. Then her jaw tightened. I grabbed the doorframe. "Shinji Wu," she said. Her voice was what it always was, even, low, calibrated like a room's temperature set by someone who had decided on exactly 70 degrees and would tolerate no deviation. "How long since your last dose?" "I texted the wrong person," I said. This felt like important information to establish. "I know." She held up her phone. The conversation was visible on the screen. "You typed your address under my most recent thread. You'd sent me a contract note at 11:40. The contract note. About the Linscott merger. That I had sent at 11:40 because I was trying to work through the first wave and look normal, and apparently had catastrophically succeeded. "I'm going to call someone," I said. "You should go. I'm sorry. This is a mistake, and I'm extremely sorry, and you should absolutely. You sent an emergency distress text." She did not move from the doorway. "You are a secondary designation Omega in unsuppressed heat, and you live alone. Who are you going to call at 11:52 p.m.? That can be here in under an hour." I opened my mouth. She waited with the patience of someone who had built a company on knowing when the other side of the table had nothing. I closed my mouth. She reached into her coat pocket and produced a small black case, the kind that opens with 2 clasps. She held it up. Standard blockers, 48-hour pharmaceutical grade. You take these. I leave. You call your actual emergency contact in the morning and review your phone contacts. A pause. I also recommend a glass of water and the thermostat down 4 degrees. Your heat signature is already affecting the hallway. I was affecting the hallway. My CEO was standing in my doorway telling me I was affecting the hallway. Why do you have those? I said. Something crossed her face. It did not stay long enough to identify. My last assistant was an Omega. She went through a suppressor shortage 2 years ago. She held the case forward. Take them. My hand was still on the doorframe. The distance between us was approximately 3 feet, which was 3 feet less than it needed to be, because the black spruce and cold iron was not a thunderstorm anymore. It was a weather event. It was a climate, and my body had a very detailed and idiotic opinion about it. I'm going to be embarrassed about this for the rest of my professional life, I said. Then take the medication and end the conversation. I reached for the case. Our fingers did not touch. She was very precise about that. The case transferred cleanly. Warm water, she said. Not cold. It metabolizes faster. Sit on the floor until the first wave passes. You'll fall otherwise. She stepped back. Turned, Miss Kang, she stopped. I do not know what I was going to say. My brain was still largely offline. What came out was, thank you. She looked at me over her shoulder. The hallway light was yellow and unkind, and she looked like a figure from an old painting anyway, sharp and certain and taking up exactly the amount of space she had decided to take up. Set a recurring alarm for your doses, she said. The Linscott note had 3 errors. We'll discuss them Monday. Then she was gone, and the stairwell door closed, and I sat down on my own floor because she'd been right about the falling. 3 errors. She had read the note. She had read the note and come anyway and brought medication, and she already knew about the errors and was waiting until Monday to mention them, which was either professional courtesy or psychological warfare. And lying on my bathroom tile at midnight, with my system finally starting to quiet under the medication, I was not equipped to determine which. My name is Shin Ji-woo. I am 26 years old, secondary designation Omega, subclass late presenter, which means I spent most of my adolescence thinking I was undesignated and built my entire professional identity on the assumption that my biology was a non-factor. I passed 3 actuarial exams before I was 22. I identified the error in the Breslow Capital prospectus that saved a pension fund $240 million. I am the person 3 departments call when the numbers do not agree with each other, because I find the disagreement. I had just texted my CEO an emergency heat distress signal by mistake, and she had arrived in 5 minutes, and the black spruce and cold iron was still faintly in my hallway, and I could not find the disagreement anywhere. That should not have warmed me. It did anyway. Monday arrived the way Mondays do, when you have spent the intervening days replaying a 3-minute doorway interaction with the granularity of a forensic accountant. I had told Petra this was unavoidable because Petra had received my follow-up text at 12:03 a.m., wrong number crisis averted, do not ask until I've slept, and Petra was constitutionally incapable of not asking. Your boss, she said on Saturday, over coffee that she brought to my apartment because she felt I deserved proximity support. Your literal CEO boss. You were in my contacts right above her. Jiwoo, her name starts with R. It was filed under RE, work, urgent. Petra put down her cup. She looked at me with the expression of someone doing very careful emotional math. And she just brought you medication. And left. And mentioned the errors in my contract note. While you were inactive, yes, Petra picked her cup back up. She drank. She set it down again. Okay, she said. Okay, I need you to tell me exactly what she smelled like. Petra, I'm serious. The scent is data. What was it? Black spruce and cold iron. Enormous and precise, like a pressure front arriving. Professional, I said. It smelled professional. Can we talk about something else? Petra looked at me the way she always looks at me when she knows I am lying, which is with complete patience and no comment, because she has known me for 7 years and understands that I will eventually tell her everything. The Monday meeting was at 9 a.m. I arrived at 8:47 and put the corrected contract note on top of my files and did not think about Thursday night at all. I was excellent at not thinking about things I had decided not to think about. I had not thought about my father's debt for 6 months. I had not thought about the scholarship I declined to send the money to my sister Miri instead for 4 years. I was a trained non-thinker about specific categories of information. The conference room had 14 chairs and floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view of the city at the height where you could no longer see individual people, only the shapes they made together. I sat in my usual chair, third from the end, and opened my laptop. She came in at exactly 9:00. She was wearing a different coat today, dark navy, and her hair was back in the way it was always back, and she smelled. She smelled like black spruce and cold iron and nothing else, and I put my eyes on my laptop screen, and they stayed there. She ran the meeting the way she ran every meeting, precise, sequential, without theater. She allocated 7 minutes to each agenda item and did not go over. When Daewon from Structured Finance made the same point twice, she said, "You've said that," and moved on. When the junior associate next to me started prefacing with "so I was thinking, maybe possibly," she said, simply yes or no, then the reasoning, and he restructured his entire contribution in real time. She got to the Linscott note at 9:41. "Shin," she said, "the corrected version is already on page 12 of your packet." A pause. She turned to page 12. She read it. It was 11 seconds. "The depreciation schedule on the secondary asset class," she said. "The original used a straight line method inconsistent with the asset type. I've corrected it to a declining balance and adjusted the 5-year projections accordingly. The year changes by approximately 1.4%. 1,038. Yes," she turned a page. "The counterparty clause. The original language permitted unilateral amendment with 14-day notice. I've flagged it as non-standard and suggested parallel language from the Hartwell Agreement in March, which the Linscott team accepted in that context." She looked up. The table had 11 other people at it. I was aware of them the way you are aware of furniture. "The third error," she said. I had saved the third error for this moment, not strategically, just because it was the smallest, and therefore the most interesting. Page 41. The signature block lists a subsidiary that was dissolved in 2023. I've replaced it with the current holding entity and flagged for legal confirmation. She was quiet for 3 seconds. "Send the corrected version to Linscott by noon," she said. "To the room, not to me." The meeting continued. I wrote things down. I did not look at her directly for the remaining 19 minutes, which was a normal and professional behavior I engaged in regularly, and not a thing I was doing for any particular reason. Afterward, in the hall, filing out, Shin, the rest of the room continued filing. I stopped. The Hartwell citation. She fell into step beside me, which meant I was walking with her toward her office, which was not something that had happened before. You remembered that from March. I remember contracts. I kept my eyes forward. The hall was the pale gray of expensive, deliberate choices. The language was unusual enough to stick. Kang Meridian doesn't usually accept that structure. We accepted it because the counterparty relationship had a 3-year precedent and the risk profile was contained. A beat. You knew that. I guessed. You didn't guess. I did not answer that. She was right. I hadn't guessed. We had arrived at the junction where her office corridor split from the general floor. She stopped. I stopped. Thursday, she said. My sternum did something. I appreciate your discretion, I said. And again, I apologize for, I'm not looking for an apology. She was looking at the wall to my left, not at me, in the way of someone who is not looking at a thing because they are thinking about it carefully. Are you? A shorter pause. Are you all right? The question was in her normal register. Even, calibrated, and yet it was not a question she asked. I had worked in this building for 11 months, and I had never heard her ask anyone in it that question. Yes, I said, fully resolved. Thank you for the medication. She nodded once. She walked toward her office. Miss Kang, she stopped. Second time in 5 days. Some part of me filed the statistic. The errors in the original note, I said. I made them on purpose. She turned. Not the depreciation method. That one I missed because the briefing packet used the wrong asset classification and I pulled from the wrong precedent. That was genuine. I kept my voice at meeting volume, level, because this was a professional conversation and I was a professional person. But the subsidiary error and the counterparty language, I flagged those internally 3 weeks ago when the draft first circulated. I wrote it up. It went to 2 senior directors and came back unchanged. I paused. The note was the 3rd submission. I left the errors in because I needed someone with actual authority to see them corrected. The hallway was quiet. You used the note as escalation, she said. I used the note as documentation of escalation that had already failed twice. The errors are now corrected by your directive, which is a different instrument than a junior analyst flagging a draft. She looked at me for a moment that had some weight in it, who received the first 2 flags. I named them. She listened. I'll review, she said. It was what she said when she meant I will handle this and you will not need to mention it again. I understood. I nodded. I walked back to my desk. Petra texted me at noon. How was Monday? Professional, I sent back. That means something happened. I put my phone face down and sent the corrected Linscott agreement to the counterparty team and did not think about black spruce and cold iron for at least 45 minutes, which was a personal record for that week. The escalation review was quiet. This was the kind of quiet that does things. Director Munn left the company 10 days later. The announcement used the phrase pursuing other opportunities, which is what announcements say. Director Choi was reassigned to the Singapore office, which was not a demotion in title and was a demotion in everything else. I found out through the internal memo system, which I read methodically every morning along with my coffee and the overnight market reports. I did not receive any separate communication about it. I did not expect to. What I did receive on the Thursday following was a calendar invitation. From Reverie Kang. Blocking. Friday, 4:30 p.m. Title, Analyst Review, Shinjae Duration, 30 minutes. The HR cycle for analyst reviews ran in February and August. It was November. I stared at the invitation for approximately 9 seconds, and then I accepted it, because what else do you do? And then I spent the rest of Thursday performing a meticulous mental audit of every piece of work I had submitted in the past 11 months. Petra called me at 7 p.m. "You're doing the audit thing. I'm reviewing my files." "You've been reviewing your files for 4 hours. The Heron Capital deck had a presentation error in Q2. I restructured the axis labels without logging the change." Jiwoo. Her voice was very gentle, the way it got when she was being precise about something. "She's not going to fire you. People who are about to be fired don't get their escalation grievances resolved and then receive private reviews. People who are about to be moved to a less visible role stop it." A pause. "What do you actually think is happening?" "Black spruce and cold iron." 5 minutes. "Are you all right?" "I think," I said carefully, "that she is a very thorough person who runs structured reviews of all significant personnel decisions, and you are a significant personnel decision. In the sense that I made a consequential escalation that resulted in senior director reassignments." "Yes." Petra was quiet for a moment. "Then, I love you. I think you are the smartest person I know. And I also think you are the only person I know who could reconstruct an entire organizational analysis in order to avoid thinking about one woman's face." "Good night, Petra." "The face?" Jiwoo. "You described the face." "You said." I ended the call with complete composure and went back to my files. Friday arrived. 4:28 p.m. I was outside her office door. Her assistant Byungjun, who had been with Kang Meridian since the founding and had the energy of someone who had seen everything and cataloged it without judgment, looked up and said, "She's ready," without checking. She was behind her desk when I came in. The office ran the whole length of the north corner, windows on 2 sides, the city arranged below in its late afternoon geometry. The desk was clear except for a single folder and a mug of tea that had the precise color of having been steeping slightly too long. "Sit," she said. "Close the door." I did both. The chair across from her desk was not a supplicant chair. It was the same height as hers, which I noted as a deliberate architectural choice and filed it. She opened the folder. 11 months, she said. "Do you know how many formal escalations the analyst pool submitted in the last calendar year?" "No, 3. She turned a page. "Yours was the only one that reached my desk, because the other 2 were resolved at the director level." A pause. "I am going to ask you something, and I want a factual answer rather than a professional one." I waited. "Why didn't you come to me directly?" I considered this. The factual answer was not the comfortable one, but she had specified. "Because I have been in this company for 11 months, I said, "and the access protocol between analyst-level staff and executive leadership is not designed for direct escalation." Because the reasonable inference was that the directors were operating within their discretion, and because I stopped. She waited. Black spruce and cold iron, quiet in the room around her like something she carried without noticing. "Because I learned a long time ago," I said, "that the most effective thing a secondary designation omega in a professional environment can do is make the work undeniable." Not the complaint, the work. I held her gaze. The note was the work being undeniable. She looked at me for a long time. The city made its shapes in the windows behind her. "The Breslau capital error," she said. "The pension fund. That was 3 years ago. I was at Edgemont Partners." "I know." Another page turned, and I realized abruptly that the folder was not a generic review document. It was research. It had my name on the tab. "You identified a valuation discrepancy in a prospectus that 2 senior actuaries had approved. The recovery was $240 million, roughly, and then you left Edgemont." The room was very still. "They promoted both actuaries," I said. She closed the folder. "I'm restructuring the analyst program," she said. There is a position that does not currently exist. It would report to me directly, not to the director tier, and its function would be independent audit and escalation review. Operational authority to flag any submission at any level with a direct channel to executive review. She put her hands flat on the desk. It would require someone who is extremely good at finding disagreements in numbers, who understands that the work being undeniable is not the same as the complaint being heard, and who is apparently comfortable enough with my schedule to contact me at 11:47 p.m. She did not smile. But something behind her eyes had shifted. That last qualification, I said, was a mistake. Most useful things are, initially, the corner of her mouth moved. The salary is listed on the attached. Review it this weekend and give me your answer Monday. If you have questions about scope, Byungjun has the full brief. She stood. The meeting was over. I stood. I took the folder she held out. Our fingers did not touch. She was still very precise about that. Miss Kong, third time. The number had become a statistic I was monitoring. Why me? She was already moving toward the credenza, where her coat was, the way she moved at the end of every day, precisely organized departure. She paused. Because you have already found 3 things that everyone else in this building missed, she said, and you were polite enough to let me announce the corrections. She put on her coat. Monday, I walked out. Byungjun did not look up from his screen, but he said, "Have a good weekend, Miss Shin," in a tone that suggested he had heard nothing and had already filed everything. I stood in the elevator for 16 floors before I remembered to press the lobby button. I told Petra that night over the phone, all of it, factually, in order. Petra was quiet for a long time when I finished. She researched the Breslow case, she said finally. Yes, she made a position that doesn't exist. Apparently, that reports directly to her. Yes, another pause. Jiwoo, honey, baby, don't. I'm just going to say the scent thing one more time. Petra, black spruce and cold iron, you said. Enormous. Those were your words. I looked at my ceiling. It was a very ordinary ceiling. Off-white, a faint crack near the light fixture I kept meaning to report to the building. A completely ordinary ceiling belonging to a completely ordinary woman who had accidentally texted her CEO and was now in possession of a job offer that did not make simple sense. I'm going to review the salary figure and the scope brief and give her a professional answer on Monday, I said. Because it is a significant professional opportunity that merits careful consideration. Jiwoo, what does she smell like when she's standing close to you? The elevator. 16 floors. The way the scent had moved through the space while she was putting on her coat, the pressure front quality of it. Enormous and precise, and my body, which had apparently decided it had opinions about this and was no longer consulting me before having them. I'll talk to you Sunday, I said. I took the job. The first 3 weeks were, professionally, the most interesting of my working life. The 4th week was when the interesting became complicated. The position came with an office, small, glass-walled, positioned between Byungjun's station and the corridor to the executive conference room, which meant I was physically adjacent to her orbit in a way that the analyst floor had not been. I had a direct channel to her calendar and a standing Wednesday morning briefing that ran precisely 30 minutes. Wednesday briefings were not like conference room meetings. They were in her office, 2 chairs pulled to the side table rather than across the desk from each other, and she reviewed my weekly audit summary, and I raised any flags, and she gave direction. The format was efficient and professional, and also, I was discovering, close in the spatial sense. Close enough that the black spruce and cold iron was not a distant weather event but a consistent climate condition that I had apparently decided to operate inside. I was handling it extremely well. I was handling it with the same professional composure I had applied to everything else in my career. Which was to say, I put all feelings about it in a box, put the box in a mental room, closed the mental door, and worked. The complication was that she had a scent tell. I found it by accident in week 4, when I caught an error in the Donovan Holdings acquisition report that traced back to a data manipulation by the external auditor, not a mistake, a manipulation. 6 figures redirected across 3 subsidiary accounts over 8 months. I brought it to the Wednesday briefing with the documentation. She read through it once, turned the pages back, read it again. The cold in her scent sharpened, the iron note intensified. Not the expansive pressure front quality of the hallway, something tighter, more directed, the scent equivalent of a focus narrowing. She smelled like that when she was angry on behalf of someone. I knew this because she smelled the same way she had on the night she asked me the name of the directors. I stored this information in the box, in the room, behind the door. The documentation is clean, she said. Yes, I've cross-referenced it against 6 quarterly cycles. The pattern starts in February, which means it predates the current acquisition discussions. Someone knew about the acquisition before the announcement. That's the logical reading. She stood. She walked to the window. Outside, the city did its things at its height, where individual people disappeared into patterns. Shin, yes, how long did this take you? The initial flag took about 40 minutes, full documentation, 3 days. She was quiet, looking at the city. You could have brought the initial flag immediately. The initial flag was a suspicion. Suspicions aren't useful. Documentation is useful. I paused. I thought you'd want the documentation. I did want the documentation. She turned from the window. The cold iron sharpness in her scent had not diminished, but it had settled, the way a storm settles into sustained wind rather than breaking. Well done. The phrase was simple. She said it the way she said everything, even, calibrated, 70 degrees. But she did not give it away often. I had 3 months of observation data now, and I could count the times she'd said it to anyone on one hand. I put that in the box too. I put a lot of things in that box. The box was getting very full. The Donovan matter went to the regulatory authority at the end of November. It made the financial press on a Wednesday, which meant it landed during our briefing. She read the alert on her phone and set it face down on the table and continued reviewing my agenda item for the week without commenting on it. You already knew it was breaking today, I said. The filing went through yesterday at 4 p.m. You didn't mention it. You didn't ask. She turned a page. The Linscott integration audit. You flagged the HR data. The classification system for contingent workers isn't consistent with the current labor agreements. It's not fraud. It's just sloppy practice that becomes liability at scale. I've drafted a correction memo, but I wanted your read on whether to route it through compliance or directly to the Linscott HR lead. She read the draft. She made 2 marks with her pen, both structural. Compliance first, she said. Then Linscott. You want the paper trail in our house before it goes to theirs. Agreed. She handed the draft back. Our fingers did not touch. They had not touched. In 3 months, hands had not touched once. She was very consistent about this. The consistency was, on some level I was not examining directly, its own form of information. December came. The city got cold and dark early. The office ran longer hours. I started keeping a second mug at my desk because the walk to the kitchen and back cost 12 minutes I didn't have. Byungjun noticed. On a Thursday, there was a second mug on my desk when I arrived, still warm, tea the color of correctly steeped, next to a note in his handwriting that said thermos in the cabinet bottom left. I found the thermos. It was the kind that holds heat for 8 hours. I thanked him. He said, without looking up, "She keeps the same kind." A pause. In 15 years, I have never seen her carry one to a briefing for someone else. I sat with that information at my desk for a moment. "Byungjun," I said, "is this you telling me something?" "I am an administrative professional," he said primly, "performing an administrative function." But the corner of his mouth was doing something. The holiday party for executive staff was December 19th. It was small, 40 people, the building's top floor, catered. The kind of event where the food is good and the conversation is professional in format and personal in content, and everyone is precisely calculating how much to drink. I wore the green dress. Petra had told me to wear the green dress. I had purchased the green dress 7 months earlier for a completely different occasion and had not worn it because I had decided at the last minute that it was too much, by which I meant it was the kind of dress that occupied space deliberately, emerald silk, fitted, and I was not in the habit of dressing for space occupation. Petra had texted me 3 times that day. The green dress, the green dress. Jiwoo, the green dress. I wore the green dress. I arrived at 7:15 and got a glass of wine and stood near the window because the window was a defensible position and I could observe the room from it. She arrived at 7:23. She was wearing black. This was not unusual. She often wore black, dark navy, or charcoal. What was unusual was the cut, which had been chosen by someone who understood her the way the charcoal overcoat understood her, precisely, without apology. She made the circuit of the room. She spoke to each cluster of people for exactly the correct amount of time. She was not performing ease. She did not perform things, but there was something different about the way she moved through the room tonight, something slightly less calibrated, as if the room's temperature had been set by someone else for once. She arrived at my window at 7:41. "The dress is new," she said. It was not a question, and also not nothing. "It's been in my closet for 7 months, I said. "That's not what new means. It's new to this context." She stood beside me, looking at the room, the way we had occasionally stood beside each other in briefings when looking at a document together, adjacent but not toward each other. Her scent was the full version tonight, not the office modulation, enormous and precise. "You're good in a room," she said. I looked at her. She was still looking at the room. "I've been standing near the window for 26 minutes, I said. "You've been watching the room for 26 minutes. That's different from hiding in a corner." She turned her glass in her hand. "You catalogued who arrived with whom, and in what order, and who has been to the bar twice." "I've been watching you watch." I had catalogued exactly that. I had not thought it was visible. "Occupational habit," I said. "Yes," a pause. "Mine too." The room made its party sounds around us. Someone laughed near the catering table. A cluster of 3 people near the bar were clearly discussing something work adjacent. You could see it in their posture. Shin. "Yes," she turned, slightly, not toward me, but no longer toward the room. The intermediate angle, the one that was its own form of information. "I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it as a person, not as my direct report." My glass was at a very precise angle. I was monitoring this. "All right," I said. "On Thursday, the Thursday in November." She did not specify which one. She did not need to. "You were alone. Your suppressor cycle failed. And you reached for help." A pause, the length of 2 careful thoughts. Who is usually there? The question was so quiet and so direct that it arrived before my professional machinery could categorize it. "Petra," I said. "Mostly, sometimes Miri, my sister, but she's 3 hours away." I held the glass level. I stopped, started again. I manage it in advance, most of the time. I keep the doses current. I don't usually miss. What happened? I had not told anyone what happened. The answer lived in the box in the room behind the door. I looked at her profile in the window light. The party was behind us. The city was below us. 40 people in a room and this particular distance, and her scent, enormous and precise, and the cold iron note that I now knew meant she was paying a specific kind of attention. The pharmacy I use was out of my formulation, I said. The alternative formulation didn't suppress as effectively. I monitored it. I thought I had more time. A breath. I miscalculated. She was quiet. And then, she said, rather than admit the miscalculation to your best friend, you sent an emergency text. I sent a text to who I thought was my best friend. You sent a text to her nearest neighbor in your contact list. Yes, because it was faster than explaining. Because I was embarrassed, I said. It felt like losing control of something I was supposed to be managing. Your own biology. My own biology. She turned her glass in her hand, turned it again. My mother, she said, ran Kang Meridian before me. She built it. She used to say, a pause, the kind that carries something old and heavy. She used to say that control was the only currency that never devalued, that a Kong who could not govern herself could not govern anything. She looked down at the city. She died believing it. The room at our backs, the city below. I did not move. She was wrong, she said. It was stated with the same weight as a board decision, not discovered in the moment, carried a long time, and now set down. I have governed everything in this company for 8 years, and I have been extremely bad at being a person inside it. You brought a stranger medication at midnight, I said. You're not a stranger. I was then, professionally, I was. No, she said. You weren't. The Breslow case, Edgemont promoted 2 actuaries who nearly cost a pension fund $250 million, and a 23-year-old junior analyst who actually found it left. Something crossed her face, the same something as the doorway. Longer now, long enough to identify. It was anger on someone else's behalf. Contained, I've known about you for 2 years. When the position opened here, I asked about you specifically. A pause. This is the part where I need you to remember that I said to answer as a person and not as my direct report. My chest was doing a number of things. I'm remembering, I said. I brought the medication because I had it and you needed it. I read the Breslow case because I was already reading it when you arrived at Kang Meridian. She held my gaze, precisely. And I created the position because the company needed it, and you are the most qualified person I have seen for it. And both of those things are true at once, and they do not negate each other. The city arranged itself far below in its patterns. Both things being true at once, I said. Yes, you want me to take that statement apart. I want you to take it at face value. The corner of her mouth moved. For once. I was looking at her profile and then I was looking at her face, because she had turned, fully, and we were standing at the window at the top of a building in December, and the room was behind us with its 40 people and its professional sounds, and her scent was the largest thing in the immediate atmosphere. Miss Kong, I said. Reverie, she said. We're having this conversation as people. That was the box tipping over. Everything in it. 4 months of cataloged information, 3-second pauses, a thermos, cold iron sharpening over documents, hands that did not touch, and a precision about not touching that was its own form of attention, all of it at once. Reverie, I said. Yes, I have been putting things in a box, I said, for 4 months. She was very still. Things that didn't fit neatly into a professional framework, I said. Observations, reactions, a scent that I have been performing great indifference about for 4 months. Black spruce, she said quietly, and something like cold iron. Yes. I looked at her directly. I know your scent signature. I know what it does when you're angry on someone else's behalf. I know what it does in a room when you modulate it, and in a room when you don't. A breath. I have been exercising considerable professional discipline. Something in her face changed, not the jaw tightening, something softer and more careful, and she said, "So have I." The room at our backs. "This is," I started. "Complicated," she said. "Yes, you're my employer. I'm aware, and an alpha, and I know what you are." Her voice was very even. "I've also known you for 4 months, and I'm asking you, as a person, Shinji Wu, not as your employer, whether what I'm describing is only complicated." I looked at the city, looked at her. "No," I said. "It's not only complicated." She exhaled. "Once, controlled, then I'd like to have dinner," she said. "Not tonight, not here. Somewhere that is not adjacent to this room or this professional context, if that's something you want." I thought about the Breslow case, about 2 years of a research file, about a thermos already warm, about the doorway at midnight and 5 minutes, and the question "Are you all right?" said in the same voice as everything else, but not at all the same. "Yes," I said, "I want that." She nodded. She turned back toward the room, and the distance between us resumed its professional geometry, and she said, "Saturday," and walked away toward another cluster of guests with the same precise allocation of time. I stood at the window for 3 more minutes. Then I texted Petra. The green dress worked. Her response arrived in 4 seconds. I knew it tell me everything. Saturday, I sent back and put my phone in my bag and went to be a person in the room. Saturday arrived in the way that anticipated things arrive, too quickly and after a very long week. She sent a car, not her car, that would have been a statement, but a car. Black, unremarkable, punctual. The driver knew the address without being told, which meant she had arranged this with a precision she had not advertised. The restaurant was small. This surprised me. Not a power table at a place designed to be seen at, but a back room in a building that wore its exterior like deliberate camouflage, 12 tables, dark wood, the kind of light that is made for conversations that take longer than the menu suggests. She was already there, navy, again, but different, softer, no structure, the kind of clothing chosen for sitting across from someone rather than commanding a room. She stood when I came in. She had not stood for anyone at the party. I registered this and sat down. The dinner took 2.5 hours. We talked about her mother, eventually, about the doctrine. Control is the only currency, about what it had built and what it had cost. She talked about it the way she talked about financial data, precisely, without drama, but the precision was what made it devastating. Her mother had been brilliant and had loved her, and had never once let her see that love without filtering it through a ledger of adequacy. I told her about Miri, about the scholarship, about the year I ate rice and canned fish for 9 months and told my sister I was fine and sent the surplus. "You didn't resent it," she said. "No, I thought about it. I resented the structure that made it the only choice available." Not the choice. That's a precise distinction. I've had time to find it. She was quiet for a moment, the way she got quiet when she was thinking through something rather than waiting for something. The restaurant was a murmur around us. The scent of black spruce and cold iron was close and warm, and no longer enormous in the way of arriving weather. Something different now. Like a room with a fire that has been burning long enough to heat the walls. "I've been very bad at wanting things," she said, "for a long time." Wanting things felt like a vulnerability in the structure. Your mother's doctrine. My mother's doctrine. She turned her glass. What I wanted was her approval. The company was the only instrument available for generating it. A pause. She died approving of the company. And of you. And of the version of me that ran it. She looked up. There are versions she didn't see. I was looking at her across a small table in a restaurant with warm walls, and her scent had done something I had not had data for yet, something that was low and steady rather than directional, the way a sound is when it becomes ambient, present everywhere, and no longer a thing you notice because you have stopped noticing air. Reverie, I said. She had said to call her that. I had been using it in my head for weeks. Yes, I'm going to say something that may be outside the framework of this dinner. Go ahead. I have been designated since I was 19, I said. I have been in this city for 6 years. I have had 2 relationships, one of which lasted 14 months and ended because he wanted something softer than I could figure out how to be, and one of which lasted 7 months and ended because she realized she was more comfortable with alphas who weren't complicated. I held her gaze. I am not practiced at being wanted for the version of me that is not useful, the version that messes up suppressor cycles and makes catastrophic contact errors and keeps things in a box for 4 months. She looked at me. What version, she said quietly, do you think I'm sitting across from? The thing in my chest was not in the box anymore. It had not been in the box for a while. I'm telling you the worst case, I said. I know. I'm asking what version you think I'm asking for. I thought about the Breslow case, about 2 years, about black spruce and cold iron doing what it did in a small room late on a Saturday in December. The whole one, I said. Yes, she said. The whole one. She walked me out at the end. The car was waiting. The city was cold and clear, the kind of cold that makes the light sharper and the distances seem shorter than they are. At the car door, she stopped. She turned. She was looking at me with the precision she brought to things she had decided. Tell me to stop, she said, and I will. The street was quiet. Don't stop, I said. She touched my face. One hand at my jaw, very deliberate. The cold iron was everywhere, and the warmth under it was everywhere too, and she kissed me once with the same precision she brought to everything else, careful and absolute. Not a question, but not a statement either, something between, something that said this is chosen and meant it. She stepped back. The car was there. The city was clear. Monday, she said. Monday, I said. I got in the car. I watched her turn back toward the restaurant, and the driver pulled smoothly away from the curb, and I looked at the city going past at street level, where you could see individual people, and I took a breath that tasted like black spruce and cold iron, and I did not put that in a box. Petra called at 11 p.m. I picked up on the first ring. Tell me, she said. I told her. All of it. In order. She was quiet for a very long time. Ji-woo, she said finally. Yes, she said tell me to stop. And I will. Yes, while standing on the street. Yes, after a 2.5-hour dinner. Yes. In a restaurant that was clearly chosen for exactly this kind of conversation. The walls were very warm, I said. And the lighting. Ji-woo, I know. I'm just going to say it. I know. She planned all of this because she wanted to take you somewhere where you could actually... She was being so careful. Petra's voice did something. She was being careful with you. That's what that is. Black spruce and cold iron. The fire that had been burning long enough to heat the walls. I know, I said. Are you okay? I think, I said slowly, that I might be quite a lot better than okay. Petra exhaled. Long and warm. Good. Now tell me again about the dress. The complication came from outside. These things usually do. Her name was Counselor Mireille So, venture consultant, former partner at Kong Meridian, current chair of the Meridian Investors Circle, and the ex-fiancé who had left Reverie 7 years ago in a manner that was described in public profiles as mutual and amicable, and described by Byung-jun, who mentioned it once with clinical neutrality and then never again. As the most controlled destruction I have observed at close range. I encountered her for the first time 6 weeks into the thing that was happening between Reverie and me, which was a slow thing, careful and deliberate. 2 dinners and a long walk through a cold museum and a Tuesday evening on her office couch, reviewing documents that we had stopped reviewing after 40 minutes and had talked instead until 10 p.m. When she looked at the time and said you need to sleep, and drove me home herself, and walked me to the lobby and held the door, and did not kiss me, not yet, just stood in the doorway light and looked at me with the precision of someone who had decided something and was taking their time with it. We had not discussed the professional question. We were aware of it. We were, by unspoken and mutual agreement, moving toward it in a straight line at a considered pace. Counselor So arrived at the office on a Thursday under the banner of the Investors Circle Quarterly Review. She was tall, elegant, the kind of woman who had the office's full attention when she walked through it, without appearing to notice. Her scent was light and expensive, something like white musk and cashmere. She smiled at everyone she met. She smiled at me specifically at 3:17 in the afternoon, when she came out of the executive conference room and found me at Byungjun Station returning a file. "You must be the new independent audit lead," she said. Reverie mentioned the restructure. "Shin Ji-woo," I said. Mireille So. Her handshake was warm and firm. Her eyes were very precise. "I understand you've already cleaned up several significant compliance oversights. Impressive for someone this early in the role." "The work warranted it," I said. "Of course." She released my hand. "I hope she's not working you too hard." "She does that." A small, knowing smile, the kind worn by people who are informing you that they have access you don't. It took me 3 years to train her out of it. She moved on. I stood at Byungjun's station. Byungjun's face was perfectly professional. "Byungjun," I said. "Yes, Miss Shin, the Investors Circle review. How long is she scheduled for?" 3 days, he said. He returned to his screen. A pause. "She schedules 3 days every time. She's been here twice this year. Historically, she takes approximately 6 days. And Miss Kang's calendar. Fully blocked for those 6 days, in past cycles." Another pause, the kind that contains information in its texture. "This quarter, I've kept it structured." "Thank you," I said. I went back to my office. I did not think about white musk and cashmere. I thought about the Meridian Q4 compliance calendar and the 3 outstanding flags I had not yet routed, and the fact that Tuesday was still Tuesday and had been a very good Tuesday. Reverie found me at 5:45 when the office was thinning. She came to my glass-walled office rather than the corridor, a thing she did not usually do. She stood in the doorway. "You met So." "Briefly, at Byungjun Station." She came in. She did not close the door, that was its own decision, but she moved to the chair across from my desk, which was the first time she had sat in it, and she sat in it. "I should have told you she was coming. You're not obligated to. Ji-woo, even, calibrated, and underneath it, the iron note, turned inward. I should have told you." I looked at her. "All right." It ended badly. Not publicly, it's framed as amicable because we were both invested in maintaining a professional relationship for the company's sake. But it ended. She stopped. She wanted a particular kind of partnership. The kind where my work was the foundation and her access was the capital. I didn't see it clearly until another stop, this one longer, until I found out that she'd been trading on pending Kang Meridian decisions in the secondary market. 3 years. The room was very still. Insider trading, I said, the kind that is extremely difficult to prove when both parties are financially sophisticated and the primary party is the one signing the filings. A pause. I ended the engagement. She understood that I had no proof that would survive legal scrutiny. The relationship with the investors' circle was maintained because the circle itself is separate from her conduct, and removing her would require exactly the kind of exposure neither of us had documentation for. I was looking at her and thinking about 3 years and proof and documentation. You needed someone with independent audit authority, I said slowly. The role was genuinely needed, she said. The position serves the company. Those things are both true. She met my eyes. But yes, if documentation exists, someone in your position would find it. The glass walls of my office, the thinning office outside, the city at whatever hour it was, past 5, the light going. Reverie, I said. Does she know this? She knows I created the role. Whether she's drawn the same conclusion, a pause. She's very intelligent. And she knows. I stopped. About us. Not from me. But she watches the office carefully. A breath. She always has. I sat with this for a moment. The shape of it. I want to be clear about something, I said. She waited. If there's documentation, I'll find it. That's what the role is. It doesn't change. I paused. It doesn't change because of what she is to you historically. The work doesn't change. I know. And I want to be equally clear that what I'm doing right now is giving you my professional position, which is the same one I would give regardless of. I stopped. I know that too. The iron note in her scent was still there, but it was different now. Something quieter. She stopped. Looked at me with the precision of someone choosing words carefully. That's why it's you. The something in my chest that had been refusing to stay in boxes did something considerable. We did not say anything else for a moment. The investors' circle review, I said. The Q4 compliance files I haven't routed yet. Is there a specific audit path that would give me access to the secondary transaction records? Her eyes were steady on mine. The circle files are under the subsidiary charter. Your authority covers subsidiary compliance. A pause. Byung-jun knows the archive access protocol. All right, I said. She stood. She was going. At the doorway, Tuesday is still Tuesday. Yes, I said. Tuesday is still Tuesday. She left. I opened the Q4 compliance calendar and started mapping the audit path. And I did not look at the clock once because the work was interesting and I was very good at it, and those 2 things had always been enough. The documentation took me 11 days. So had been meticulous. The secondary transactions were routed through a family office vehicle 2 steps removed from any direct Kang Meridian connection. On paper, on straightforward paper, it was invisible. The thing about invisibility is that it requires consistency, and consistency over time creates patterns. And patterns, when you are looking at 6 years of quarterly transaction data across 3 corporate cycles, develop a shape. The shape was exact. The family office vehicle's transaction timing aligned with pending Kang Meridian material decisions at a correlation that was statistically impossible without prior knowledge. Not in 1 quarter. In every quarter, for 6 years, I built the documentation in 2 stages. The quantitative analysis, which was the correlation map and the statistical significance figures, and the narrative reconstruction, which was the sequence: decision pending, transaction executed, decision announced, position liquidated, repeated 17 times. 17 instances, not 3 years. 6. She had started before the engagement. I brought it to Reverie on a Tuesday at 8 a.m. before the office filled. I spread it across the side table in her office, the table we had used for every Wednesday briefing, that had become, over months, a geography I associated with closeness rather than distance. She read through it once, turned back. Read it again. The cold iron went very precise and very quiet. She turned to the last page, where the 17 instances were listed with dates and amounts. She started before the engagement, she said. Yes, by approximately 14 months. Her jaw moved. Once, very controlled. She stopped. I waited. She was never there for the partnership, she said. It was not a question. It was the delivery of an old wound into a new light. The access was the point, I said. I'm sorry. She looked at me. The city was gray outside, overcast, the light flat and cold. Don't be sorry, she said. The documentation is, she stopped. Started again. This is what it looks like when the work is done properly. It's 17 instances over 6 years, I said. The statistical significance is well past any reasonable threshold for coincidence. Combined with the timing reconstruction, this is documentable. I paused. This is prosecutable, with the right legal team. Yes, she closed the folder. She put her hands flat on the table the way she had when she'd offered me the position. The gesture of someone who has made a decision and is now implementing it. I want a second structural review, not of the findings, of the documentation itself. I want to ensure that the audit chain is unimpeachable. I'll run it through external counsel. Vance and Harker, they have precedent with secondary market cases. A pause. This will take time to move through legal. I know, she looked at me. Outside, the gray city. The folder between us on the table we had made into something else, without planning to. Jiwoo, she said. Thank you. I looked at her, at the cold iron note, doing what it did when she was holding something heavy with both hands, and had decided to hold it. Reverie, I said. It's Tuesday. She looked at the folder, at the window, at me. Yes, she said. It is. She reached across the table. She touched my hand. First time, deliberate and careful, the way she did everything, her thumb moving once across my knuckles and then resting, and the warmth of it was enormous in the specific way that careful things are enormous. We stayed like that for a moment, in the gray morning, with the documentation between us and the city outside and the office not yet full. Then she said, I'll have Byungjun schedule Vance and Harker for tomorrow, and I said, I'll have the complete package ready by noon, and she did not move her hand until I stood to leave. The legal process took 93 days. So was careful, and her lawyers were good, and the initial meeting with the regulatory authority lasted 6 hours. I was present for 4 of them, as the analyst who had constructed the documentation, answering questions about methodology with the same precision I brought to anything, where precision was the most useful thing available. On day 71, So's counsel requested a private meeting with Reverie. Without me, without legal, informal, Reverie told me about the request at 9:00 p.m. on a Tuesday at her apartment, which was where we spent most Tuesdays now, her kitchen, which had more equipment than someone who worked 14 hours a day had any evident reason for, and a couch that faced the city at the height where individual people disappeared, and a particular quality of quiet that was different from the office quiet. She wants to discuss settlement terms, Reverie said. She wants to gauge what you'll accept. Yes, she was at the counter, her back to me, doing something with the tea. She had learned the exact steeping time I preferred, which was a piece of information she had acquired and retained and deployed without announcing it. She'll offer to resign from the circle quietly. Voluntary return of a portion of the gains. No admission. You'll decline. She turned, brought both cups to the table. Yes, she sat. The settlement would protect her from criminal referral. The documentation is strong enough for criminal referral. It's 17 instances, I said. The narrative is airtight. The statistical analysis has been reviewed by 2 independent actuaries. A pause. Vance and Harker think referral is appropriate. I know. She wrapped both hands around her cup. She'll try to make it personal. In the meeting, she'll position the referral as a stop. Vindictive, a scorned partner using regulatory process as a weapon. The word scorned sat in the room for a moment. Is that a concern, I said, for the regulatory narrative? No, the documentation stands independent of our history, but she'll make the argument publicly if the referral proceeds. Let her, I said. She looked at me. She can make whatever argument she wants, I said. The documentation is 17 instances and the statistical analysis and the transaction timeline. That exists independent of your history with her, and independent of my role, and independent of anything personal. The work is the work. A pause. If she wants to argue that 2.9 sigma correlation across 6 years is motivated by a scorned partner, she's welcome to try that in front of the regulatory panel. Something moved across her face. The iron note in her scent did something different, not the focused anger, not the grief-adjacent quiet. Something I had not had data for yet. You are. She stopped. What? Very certain, she said, and it was not the usual delivery. It was softer and surprised, and underneath it was something that sounded like relieved. I have 17 documented instances, I said. Certainty is appropriate. About the case. About the case. A breath. And about other things. We looked at each other across her kitchen table, cups warm between our palms. The city at the height where people disappeared, arranged in its patterns outside. Tell me, she said. The voice she used when she was not her professional self, when she was the person who had told me about her mother in a restaurant with warm walls. I started. I have been the person who makes the work undeniable for a long time. Because that was the instrument available, because being wanted for the useful version was more reliable than being wanted for the whole version. I held her gaze. You are the first person who has consistently treated those as the same person. She was very still. They are the same person, she said. I know that now. A pause. That's what I'm certain about. She reached across the table. She took my hand, turned it over, studied my palm like there was documentation in it. I have to tell you something, she said. I haven't, she stopped. Started precisely. The controlling instinct. The doctrine. I am working on it. I'm aware that I have considerable capacity to structure situations and people in ways that serve my own comfort. I am aware that I have done that. She did not look away. I do not want to do that with you. I know, I said. You can't know. I can observe it. I turned my hand over so it was holding hers. The position is real. The company needed it. The work has been the work. You haven't structured me. You've given me the infrastructure to do what I was going to do anyway. A pause. And you told me about the so history before it could be used against me. That's not control. I looked for the right word. That's choosing. She looked at our hands. Ask me with your words, she said quietly. Whatever you want. I'll tell you. Something in me settled, the long, specific tension of someone who has been armored for a very long time and has just been asked to put the armor down in a room where it's safe. Stay, I said. The simplest word I had. Tonight, tomorrow, as much as you want. A breath. I want you there. She looked at me, the city outside, the cups on the table. Yes, she said. The regulatory panel met on a Wednesday morning in February. I was not present. This was the legal team's domain. Reverie was there, along with Vance and the lead partner from Harker. The presentation of the documentation lasted 4 hours. I was in my glass-walled office, running a different audit. Byung-jun brought me tea at 11:00, unrequested. At 1:47 p.m., he appeared in my doorway. The hearing has concluded, he said. Outcome: full criminal referral. Unanimous panel. A pause. Miss So's counsel requested a continuance. It was denied. I looked at my screen. The numbers on it were different numbers, a different matter, but they had the same quality they always had when they were right, quiet, certain, at rest. Thank you, Byung-jun, I said. Miss Kong is expected back within the hour. He turned to leave. Then, Miss Shin, yes, in 15 years, he said. I have never once seen her call ahead to say she's returning. He left. I looked at my screen. My phone lit up at 2:03. On my way back. The work held. 3 words. Then you held. I looked at those words for a moment, at the city outside my glass walls, which was full of individual people visible at street height. I know, I sent back. I'll be here. She walked in at 2:34. She did not go to her office. She came to mine. She came through the glass door, and she stood in front of my desk, and she looked at me with the precision of someone who has been calibrated for a very long time and has decided to stop calibrating, and I stood up. Close the door, I said. She did. She crossed the office, and she kissed me like the first time, but not like the first time. Not careful in the mode of beginning, but careful in the mode of something that has decided it is permanent. Her hands were at my face, both of them, and her scent was enormous and present, and no longer even slightly like weather. It was just the room. It was just the air. When she pulled back, her forehead was against mine. The referral panel chair asked me, she said quietly, how I obtained the documentation. What did you say? I said I hired someone very good. A pause. He asked how good. What did you say? I said she finds what everyone else agrees isn't there. Her hands moved to my jaw, precise, the way she touched things she had decided. He said, that sounded like an asset. I'm an employee, I said. Technically, she tilted her head. We should discuss that. Yes, I said. We should. Later, she said. Later, I agreed. Outside the glass walls, Byung-jun was typing. The office was doing its afternoon things. The city was at the height where it made patterns. Inside the glass walls, I put my hands against her collarbone, and she was warm, and she was here. And she had said you held, and I had, and the armor was in a different room now. Reverie Kong asked me to marry her at 7:14 in the morning on the 1st of April, which was not a date she had chosen with symbolic intent. She had been planning it since February, and the logistics had simply taken this long to arrange to her satisfaction, which I understood once I understood her. She knelt, which she had told no one she was going to do, and which nearly stopped my heart. Small box, dark green leather. Inside it, a band, no stone, just metal, white gold with a fine line of black inlay, the black the exact shade of cold iron. I have been, she stopped. Began again. She was always precise, but she was not always immediate, and the difference this morning was that she was not going to wait until she found the perfect instrument. I have spent a significant amount of my life deciding what was worth wanting. I was wrong most of the time. I was efficient, and I was wrong. She held the box very steady. Her hands were steady. You are the first thing I wanted that was also the right thing, and I know that you know numbers, so I'll tell you the numbers. I have loved you since February 12th, which is the morning after the Donovan filing went public, and I came in early, and you were already there, and you had made coffee, and you handed me a cup without being asked. A pause. I counted from there. February 12th. I had not known it was a date. I had been doing what I always did, arriving early, making coffee because the coffee was better when you didn't wait for the office service, handing her a cup because she was there, and the cup was there, and that was what you did. She had counted from there. Yes, I said. My voice came out very even, which was what happened when something was large enough that the machinery stopped, and the simple thing came through. Yes, of course, yes. She put the ring on my finger. She stood. She held my hand with both of hers for a moment, turned it over, studied it. Tell me something, she said. I've loved you since October, I said. I know the exact date, but I am not going to tell you because it is professionally compromising. She laughed. Not the managed fractional smile, not the corner of the mouth movement, a full, surprised, delighted laugh, and I stored that as the best sound I had collected in 31 years of existing. I told Petra at 7:45, a 9-second phone call because she answered instantly and started crying immediately and could not form sentences. I need you to say words, I said. The ring, she said. What does the ring look like? Black inlay, I said. Cold iron. A pause. A long pause. Oh, Petra said softly. Oh, she knew. Yes, I said. She knew. The bonding ceremony was small. This was not a sacrifice. It was a preference, shared, arrived at over 3 conversations and 1 long walk. Reverie had done large things publicly all her professional life and had no interest in making her private life a stage. I had spent most of my professional life being invisible in rooms and had strong feelings about which rooms I chose to be visible in and for whom. Byung-jun organized it, the 12-table restaurant with the warm walls and the room at the back. He brought his husband. Petra came with Soo-ah, who she had been seeing for 7 months, and who I had watched Petra try to act casual about and had failed at for most of those 7 months. Reverie's second-in-command was a woman named Director Yoon-ha, broad-shouldered and 60 years old, and the person who had run operations for Kang Meridian for 11 years, who arrived with a gift that was a small framed print of the city at street height, where the people were visible, and said nothing about it except I thought you'd understand why, and had been right. My sister Miri came from 3 hours away with her husband and Hana, who was 4 years old, and imperious in the way of 4-year-olds who have been told something important is happening, and are very serious about their role in it. Hana had been told she was the witness. She took this responsibility with the gravity it warranted. She sat between me and Reverie during the ceremony, very upright, and when the officiant asked if anyone had objections, she looked around the room with an expression that dared anyone to try. And no one did. The vows were short. Reverie had written hers. She read them with the steadiness she brought to everything, and her voice was even the whole way through. I promise to choose you every morning. To tell you when I am afraid rather than making the fear into a policy. To let you find the disagreements in me, because you will find them anyway, and I would rather you find them because I showed them to you. To light every room you come home to. A pause. I promised you once that I would always find the light on. I intend to be the light. I had not known she was going to say that, the promise from a Tuesday in October, planted in a kitchen over cups of tea. She had been keeping it, and she had been planning to say it today, and I had thought I was the one who remembered everything. I looked at her. She was looking at me. The room was very warm. I said, I have been putting myself in boxes my whole life. Useful boxes. Competent boxes. Boxes that meant no one had to see the parts that were harder to want. You opened every one of them, and you didn't take inventory. You just stood there until I came out. My voice was not as even as hers. I accepted this. I promise to keep coming out. To let you see the mistakes and the miscalculations, and the times I get the numbers wrong. To trust that you want the whole version. I looked down at her hands holding mine. The ring, cold iron inlay, chosen because she knew my scent signature. You are the only thing I have ever been certain of that wasn't made of numbers. Hana, between us, said, "Are you going to kiss now?" Everyone laughed. The room was warm. Reverie looked at me and said, "With your permission," and I said, "Granted," and she kissed me, and Hana covered her eyes and then uncovered them immediately to watch. Byungjun, I was informed later by Yoonha, cried. He maintained afterward that he had not. 6 months after the bonding ceremony, Mireille So was formally charged on 14 counts. The plea arrangement negotiated by her counsel included voluntary restitution to the affected market participants, a permanent bar from serving on any financial regulatory body, and a fine that was covered extensively in 3 international financial publications. The investors' circle appointed a new chair by unanimous vote. Reverie read the filing summary on a Saturday morning while I was making coffee. I brought her a cup, and she folded the tablet away and put her hand out for mine, and we sat at the kitchen table for a while without talking, the city visible outside at the height where patterns were. "Done," she said finally. "Done," I said. She turned my hand over. "The ring." "The Linscott integration is fully complete," she said. "Compliance audit closed last week." "I know," I wrote the close report. "The independent audit function is established. It runs without you needing to be the only one operating it." I looked at her. "You're doing math." "I'm always doing math." She held my hand. "The position was designed around you. I want to redesign it so it doesn't require you." "So that you can," she stopped. "I want to offer you a different role. Operational, not audit, if you want it, or not if you want to stay in audit. The function is yours to run however you want." "What's the other role?" "CFO track. A pause. Structured development. 3 years. 2 department rotations, a seat at the strategy table." Another pause. "Reported to the board, not to me." I looked at her, at the ring on my hand, which she was still holding, at the city outside. "You're creating structural distance," I said, "between us professionally." "I'm creating appropriate professional architecture for a marriage," she said, "which I should have built before, except that we weren't married before, and the timeline," she stopped. A breath. "I want you to have a line of authority that doesn't pass through me. That is yours. That the work can live in without," she looked at me. "I don't want to be the ceiling of your career." I thought about the Breslow case, about 2 actuaries promoted and 1 analyst who left, about the note with 3 errors and the version that was too important to be just a flag. "You're not the ceiling," I said. "You're the first infrastructure that didn't require me to work around it." She was quiet. "CFO track," I said. 3 years, if you want it. "What does the board composition look like?" She told me. I listened. I asked 3 questions. She answered all 3 in under 4 sentences each. "All right," I said. "Yes?" "Yes," I turned her hand over, held it the way she held mine. "Reported to the board. 3 years. 2 rotations. A pause. You're going to hate not being in the reporting chain." "Deeply," she said with perfect sincerity. "I'm doing it anyway." I looked at her. At the controlled delivery of a woman who had built an entire doctrine around control and was spending it, carefully, one deliberate choice at a time, on a person she had decided was worth the spending. "You said you'd choose me every morning," I said. "Yes, this is that. Yes, then yes, I said. To all of it. She brought our joined hands up, pressed her mouth to my knuckles, set them back down. Outside, the city. At the height where you could see patterns and the height where you could see people, both at once, if you chose the right window. Miri called that afternoon with Hana, who had apparently decided that she needed to check in weekly and had established a standing video call. Are you kissing again? Hana said, when Reverie appeared over my shoulder. We were having coffee, I said. You're always having coffee. Hana was on the floor with what appeared to be several hundred small building blocks arranged in a complex structural pattern. Reverie, is the coffee good? Excellent coffee, Reverie said. Your sister makes it correctly. Mama makes it wrong, Hana said. Too strong. I'm not allowed to have it, but I've smelled it. Miri, off screen, Hana. I was reporting a fact, Hana said with dignity. I watched Reverie watch Hana dismantle half the block structure and rebuild it in a different configuration. Reverie's face did the thing it had started doing around Hana specifically, the precision still there, but something else underneath it. Something warm and slightly at sea, like a very competent person encountering a system they had not yet learned to read. She's building something specific, Reverie said quietly, next to me. A hall, I said. She's been building the same hall for 3 weeks. She says it's not done yet. What's it for? I haven't asked. She'll tell me when she's ready. Reverie watched. Hana placed a block with precision that was, in its way, familiar. She concentrates the same way you do, Reverie said. I looked at Hana, at my sister's daughter, 4 years old, building something complicated and patient and her own. At the way she tilted her head at a problem. She does, I said. Reverie's hand found mine on the couch. She did not look away from the screen. The hall was, Hana explained to us 2 weeks later via video call with the completed structure visible behind her, for the wedding. Specifically, our wedding, which she felt had been insufficiently architecturally represented. It was in a restaurant, she said. There was no hall. There was a room, I said. Halls are more official. She showed us the doorway, which had a small paper flag above it that said, in 4-year-old writing, Jiwoo Reverie. Our names are on the flag, Reverie said. So you can find your seats, Hana said, with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. You have to know where to sit. Reverie looked at me. I looked at Reverie. I know where I sit, Reverie said. Where? Said Hana. Next to her. Simple, certain, the 70-degree voice that had decided. Hana considered this. Then she moved the flag to the side of the hall where there were 2 chairs. Okay, she said. You can sit there. The morning of the first anniversary of the bonding ceremony arrived cold and very bright, the kind of winter light that is merciless and clarifying, that makes every edge exact. Reverie was already up. This was unusual. She was a person who slept with the efficiency of someone who had decided to be excellent at sleeping, and she did not typically rise before 6. It was 5:47. I found her at the window. The city was all edges in the winter light. There's a deal breaking, she said when she heard me. The Vosper acquisition. Yes, they moved the announcement. She had her phone in her hand. I'm going to need to be in by 7. I know. I stood beside her, the city at the height where patterns were. I made coffee. I know. I could smell it. She glanced at me sideways, the corner of her mouth. You always make it when I'm up. I make it when there's something to navigate, I said. The coffee is the instrument available. She looked at me. Then she set her phone down on the windowsill, and she turned and she put her arms around me, which was not something she did standing at windows at 5:47 in the morning. and her scent was black spruce and cold iron and the warmth underneath that had always been there and that I had learned to read as home. "Happy anniversary," she said, into my hair. "Happy anniversary," I said. We stood there in the winter light, the city arranged below us in its patterns, and the coffee getting to exactly the right temperature on the counter, and neither of us moved for a while. At 6:02, she stepped back, picked up her phone, and said, "Walk me through the Vosbra structure. Off the top of my head, or do you want the documentation?" "Top of your head." I walked her through it. She asked 4 questions. I answered 3 of them, and the 4th I said, "I'll have that confirmed by 7:15, and she said 7:00, and I said 7:10, and she said 7:05, and I said done. And she smiled. The full one, not the fractional movement, the one that had only appeared after October, after everything, and was mine now. She kissed me at the door, her coat already on, her expression already the calibrated version, the one the world got. But she held the doorway for a second longer than the logistics required. "Lights on when you get back," I said. She looked at me. "It always is now," she said. Then she was gone, and the elevator closed, and the apartment was quiet with the specific quality of a quiet that holds someone rather than being empty of them. I stood in the kitchen, and the winter light made everything exact, and the coffee was the right temperature, and I thought about a text sent at 11:47 on a Thursday night in November. About a wrong number that was also the right one. About everything that had been invisible and was not anymore. There are women who spend their lives in rooms where no one turns the lights on for them, who learn to work in the dark, to find the numbers in the dark, to make the work so undeniable that eventually someone has to look. I was one of them. I learned to be excellent at it, the thing no one tells you because it sounds impossible from the inside of the dark room, is that being found does not require becoming a different person. The whole version, the one who miscalculates and makes catastrophic contact errors and keeps things in boxes and knows exactly what the numbers say, but sometimes, just sometimes, cannot find the disagreement in her own heart until someone stands quietly outside it and waits. That version is the one who gets to stay. The city made its patterns outside the winter window. Somewhere in it, she was already in the building, already at the desk, already doing the work, and the ring on my finger was cold iron, and the coffee was the right temperature, and the door, when she came home, would have the light on. The end.